an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Well, happy 4th of July to our friends stateside and all of the listeners here in Canada who are from the United States. Independence Day. And of course, we're coming off Canada Day weekend here in this part of the world. Hope you enjoyed it. I hate to, complain about the forecasters getting it wrong, but in this part of the world, and certainly in central Ontario, it was supposed to be sort of a rainy affair. Not really. Kind of a good weekend to be kicking back with friends and family around the barbecue, etc., and celebrating Canada Day. So, hope you managed to enjoy it. So it means it's a short week around here, which means things get a little busier than you'd normally like to. But for all of the caterwauling and complaining about Meta and Google versus Canadian journalism, I want to try something today. We're not going to do a featured interview. We're going to run down some of the stories. If I were in the newsroom this morning, these would have been in my lineup. Okay? And I did not use Google to source any of this particular editorial. None. Now, what I'm going to do is include in the show notes for today's program where you can find the stories that we're talking about. And in some cases, it's behind a paywall. So what? If you want good journalism, you got to pay for it. It shouldn't be Google. It shouldn't be taxpayers. It should be the user who pays for it and supports it. Start there. It's pretty hard to, complain about our democracy and say, nobody's paying, these guys are stealing the content. Well, the big companies have been giving it away for years, as you've heard me say. Now, finally, they're putting stuff behind a paywall. There's no way the CBC should be behind a paywall, and they're not. But there are some things you can subscribe to nonetheless as added content. We'll get into that in a different show. But the point of this is, for all of the, oh my, how are we ever going to find the news of the day? Let me show you how. All right, I didn't even need to actually go to any kind of website. I just opened my weather app, found out it's hot. We're talking about maximum temperatures in the coming days in this part of the world. High 20s, low 30s. And with all that humidity, some days it's going to feel like 40 degrees out there. And with that, of course, will come the standard possibility of a late day thunderstorm. But it's really hot. I mean, for all the complaining we did, certainly in southern Ontario, central Ontario, about that slow, wet spring, you're going to get whacked in the next, it looks like almost 2 weeks. With hot weather. That's, I guess, good news if, you got some vacation planned at the lake. Otherwise, all that work outside going to be a challenge. And I guarantee you, we're going to have a few more smoky days because this kind of weather only going to lead to more wildfires across the province. And certainly we're getting more than our share of it in Ontario and Quebec, but right across the country. Some good reporting from the CBC this morning. Interesting to see how, all of the complaints and criticisms aimed at the Ford government, they're in the back pockets of the developers. Today, CBC's reporting Queen's Park is proposing some new rules that's supposed to crack down on any developers who either cancel or, have these huge pre-construction hits and big price hikes before a house is actually built, right? And you hear those stories often. In fact, the CBC reported on it earlier. And, this was developers who were trying to force the buyers to pay more than they had originally agreed to. Otherwise, there was a possibility that they would lose the home. So Doug Ford weighing in, vowing the government, says the CBC, would do more to tackle these types of situations. And he says, and this sounds like Doug, nothing burns me up more than that. Some developers just trying to make extra money off the backs of hard-working people. They've talked the talk. They're almost close to walking the walk. Let's see if they do. Some news from the Globe and Mail this morning. For all the noise, as I mentioned off the top, about Ottawa's Bill C-18, and that's the one that stand off between the big tech companies and Canadian news outlets. Well, the U.S. Senate is weighing in. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar has introduced and co-sponsors a Journalism Competition and Preservation Act. It was approved in June. Now, by the Senate, that is, the Judiciary Committee. So it's got a long way to go. And it's got bipartisan support. Both sides of the House, the political aisle, are supporting this. Let's see, the numbers were pretty interesting. There was something like 17 different politicians in Washington supporting this idea. And the bill would force Meta and Google to pay, the publishers their content, for the content. Same kind of plan that we've got here in Canada. It's a bad plan. She didn't say that. That's sort of an editorial footnote. But she's got 15 co-sponsors. 7 Republicans and 1 independent. Yahoo. They're all in favor of this. But I think they're afraid of the possibilities of what this might mean. I heard some interesting analysis on this on the weekend. If this were to go ahead and Google and Facebook pull out, and it certainly sounds like that's going to happen in Canada, I don't hold up a whole lot of hope that there's going to be any real change. What's going to fill that void once the legitimate news goes away, right? I think that's the real worry. So it sounds good on a political campaign, on a bumper sticker. We're in favor of strong journalism. But will it go anywhere? I don't know. So yes, there was a bit of chaos this weekend for Twitter users, more so than we've seen in a long time. Twitter announcing it's going to limit the number of tweets that users can access on any given day. Elon Musk now saying TweetDeck, which I use quite regularly, is going to be covered by a paywall. Not doing that. Not in the next 30 days, that'll be it. You got to have the paywall subscription for TweetDeck. Now, this morning, the BBC reporting, Meta has announced plans to launch a Twitter look-alike. The app is called Threads, set to go live Thursday of this week. As of now, Threads is being offered for free. Some exclusive reporting from the Toronto Star finds ransomware attacks are on the rise in this country. That's disturbing enough. The ransom payments are also increasing. Research done by the law firm Blake's suggesting the median ransom paid to recover and restore corporate IT systems has risen from $100,000 per incident in 2020 to $546,000 in 2022. So if that catches your interest, I would encourage you to flip over to the Star. Yeah, pay the subscription. It's an exclusive story, good reporting, important storytelling. Otherwise, you can also check out our Story Studio Network cyber security podcast series, One Click to Cyber Chaos. And the links are in the show notes. Of course, as I said, some of these stories are behind the paywalls. And again, put up the cash. If you really want to know what's going on in your world, spend a few bucks a month to get there. That would include subscribing to the Queen's Park Observer. It's the daily newsletter founded and published by Sabrina Nanji. And if you want to be plugged in on Ontario politics, besides listening to On the Ledge, your Ontario politics podcast, I'd subscribe to Sabrina's newsletter. Again, links are in the show notes. Today, her Above the Fold story, all about the Liberal leadership race here in Ontario. Don Valley East MPP Adil Shamji is poised to jump into the Liberal leadership race, and that will make 5 who will be, well, in the running anyway, whether or not there's going to be more, but the Liberals will decide who will be the next leader, and we'll find out early in December. All right, that'll do it for Now and Next, Tuesday, July the 4th. You can follow me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, well, Twitter for now. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, at Dave Trafford is where you will find me. Tomorrow, we'll go deep on some controversial decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court. Lawyer Courtney Betty will join us for some analysis. Now, just some feedback. I'm just curious to know if you like this format, drop me a note. You can do that on social media for sure, or hello@storystudionetwork.com.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Now and Next is produced by Becky Coles. Our production manager is Jamie Nickerson. Audio editors are Mike Trutler and Drew Garner, and our sonic logo designer is Greg McDonald. Our executive producers are Dave and Aaron Trafford.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.